You will come a little closer because I cannot put this too loud. Okay, I want to introduce our town council member, Emmanuel Ayala Perez. He wants to give the introduction.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Sí, esta es la primera
esposa de la negada esposa de James.
y darles un abrazo fraternal de parte del pueblo. I want to welcome all of my Puerto Rican brothers and sisters here today, gathered here, and on behalf of me and my brothers, we say welcome and thank you for being here.
Okay, we want to say, I see a lot of good faces here. I hope I have time to introduce everybody. But like I say, when we finish, we can stay around. And for me, it's very important to everybody know everybody. If you see all around, we are people involved in social issues. We're not here for party. We're here to honor the Puerto Rican flag. I cannot go into detail because we got 3 speakers today. Let me introduce first Mr. Iván Ramos. You see is there? Mr. Iván Ramos is the president of Partido Independentista Willimantic Connecticut chapter.
Yeah.
We're going to speak about the origin of the Puerto Rican flag. Second speaker, Mr. Jose Oro. Jose, vente por aquí. Jose Oro is our Cuban American brother, and the reason he's here because a lot of history between the Puerto Rican flag and the Cuban flag. We call the sister flag. He can explain why the similarity. Last but not least, Dr. Ricardo Perez. Ricardo, come here. He gonna, when everybody thinks about Puerto Rican flag, people think about Puerto Rico. The Puerto Rican flag was created in New York City, and that Mr. Ramos gonna explain you later. Okay, we're gonna have like a maybe 20-minute presentation, and then if you have any question, please don't be afraid to ask, okay? Okay, let's start with Mr. Iván Ramos.
Thank you, James. I want to thank James for taking this initiative. I also want to welcome everyone who's here today. Thank you very much. I will not name the names of the many organizations that you all represent, but they're very dear to our hearts. I know that you are very solidarious with Puerto Rico, and that is very important to all of us. I will say some words, and then as James explained, I will say, Jose and Ricardo will follow me. Wayne is following me here a little. Okay. We gather to celebrate the 126th anniversary of the flag of Puerto Rico. In our current era, the flag of Puerto Rico is a symbol that unites all Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico and its diaspora throughout the world. This flag unites all Puerto Ricans, regardless of their race, religious beliefs, social class, or political ideology. Since Willimantic is a city with a very large Puerto Rican population, I am sure that all of you have noticed that the display of the flag is used to demonstrate the pride that all Puerto Ricans feel towards their island, their culture, and their people. Puerto Ricans wave their flag in moments of collective joy, such as a victory in an international sports competition, a parade, or a concert of one of their very highly successful musical performers. However, due to the great significance of this date, we must take some time to learn about the origin of the Puerto Rican flag and to reflect about its role and its history in Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican people. An in-depth inquiry into the history of the flag will lead us to conclude that the Puerto Rican flag is above all things a symbol of the heroism and sacrifice of the brave men and women of the island. As I will explain today, the Puerto Rican flag is not just a symbol of the joys and accomplishments of the Puerto Rican people. It is much more than that. It is a symbol of a struggle that has caused many patriotic Puerto Ricans to be persecuted, to suffer imprisonment, and make the ultimate sacrifice. The Puerto Rican flag was created in the 1890s in New York City by a group of Puerto Rican pro-independence revolutionaries who were led by Dr. Ramon Emeterio Betances, the father of the Puerto Rican motherland. It is important to point out that this flag was created by Puerto Rican revolutionaries for the sole purpose of serving as the national flag of the future Republic of Puerto Rico. Therefore, the Puerto Rican flag is not merely the flag of a region or a territory, or the flag of an ethnic group. The Puerto Rican flag instead intends to be much more than that. It is the flag of a nation, the nation of Puerto Rico. At the time that the flag of Puerto Rico was created, the struggle for Puerto Rican independence had been underway for at least 27 years. Puerto Rico was under Spanish colonial rule. Cuba, the largest of the Caribbean islands, was also under Spanish domination and had already fought 2 unsuccessful wars for independence. One of these wars lasted 10 years. This situation led Puerto Rican and Cuban revolutionaries to join forces and fight together against the Spanish Empire. It is in this spirit of Caribbean solidarity towards the end of the 19th century, Cuban and Puerto Rican revolutionaries find themselves in exile in New York City. At the time, José Martí, the apostle of the Cuban independence, was with these revolutionaries in New York, preparing for a new armed expedition into Cuba. This historical context sets the stage for the creation of the Puerto Rican flag. While there are many theories and accounts of exactly how the Puerto Rican flag was designed, it is undisputed that the Puerto Rican flag was officially approved in December 22nd, 1895, at a meeting of the Puerto Rican Committee of the Cuban Revolutionary Party. This is why December 22nd is the day of the Puerto Rican flag. When historians describe the Cuban and Puerto Rican revolutionaries living in New York in the 1890s, they suggest that these selfless men and women were extremely fatigued and tired due to the intensity of their struggle. The version that has been generally accepted as the most accurate account of how the flag was created states that one night in New York, Antonio Vélez Alvarado, a Puerto Rican revolutionary from the town of Manatee, was very, very tired. His eyesight was affected due to his tiredness and was unable to focus properly. At a certain moment, he stared firmly at a Cuban flag that was hanging in the party headquarters. And an optical illusion caused his eyes to see the Cuban flag with its colors inverted. It was at this moment that he allegedly came up with the idea of creating a flag using the same design as the Cuban flag, but with its colors inverted. Vélez Alvarado shared this idea with other Puerto Rican revolutionaries, and most of them agreed with this proposal for a Puerto Rican flag. Puerto Rican revolutionaries in New York were eager to liberate their nation, and in March of 1897, they carried out an underground incursion into the southwestern part of Puerto Rico. Their goal was to take over the town of Yauco by assault and demand independence for Puerto Rico. They smuggled rifles and machetes into the island. But in this military campaign, they also brought something else that was just as important as their weapons. They brought the Puerto Rican flag that they had created in New York. This was the first time in history that the Puerto Rican flag was flown in Puerto Rican territory. This rebellion for independence is known as La Intentona de Yauco. And there is a very famous picture of this event that shows the revolutionary troops with the flag in Yauco. However, the picture of the Puerto Rican flag in the battle in Yauco is rarely shown to the Puerto Rican people, particularly children. Instead, The images that Puerto Ricans usually see of their flag are happy ones. Instead of pictures of the flag in the struggle for independence, Puerto Ricans are usually showed happy images of people dancing with their flag or waving their flag at parades, celebrations, or sporting events, or pictures of the flag by the side of contestants in beauty pageants. Fortunately, more and more Puerto Ricans are now learning the history of the flag and the struggle that it represents. Children and young Puerto Ricans are beginning to hear about events such as the Ponce Massacre in 1937, or the repressive gag law known as Ley de la Mordaza that criminalized the independence movement in the 1950s. This brutal acts of political repression in the 20th century didn't happen under Spain. These acts of repression happened under the United States colonial rule. In the Ponce Massacre, policemen acting under the orders of American Governor Blanton Winship opened gunfire against a group of Puerto Rican nationalists who were marching through the center of town, killing 21 persons and wounding about 150 others.
There he goes.
Police opened fire and killed the young man. Police opened fire and killed the young man who was carrying the Puerto Rican flag in front of the march. As the young man went down, almost immediately, a woman by the name of Carmen Fernandez rushed to pick up the flag from the young man who had been shot. As she raised the flag, police shot her in the chest and killed her also. Subsequently, another brave woman named Dominga de la Cruz Becerril came and took the flag from Carmen Fernandez. Dominga was able to take the flag and run to a house in Ponce, where she was offered shelter and protection from the insular police. Today, as we celebrate the flag, we are all Dominga. We have taken the flag, honored it, and preserved it for future generations. The flag of Puerto Rico is the flag of a nation, and at the same time, it is also the flag of the struggle of the nation for its liberation. Because in the history of the nations of the world, the struggle for liberation is an integral part of the idea of the nation in itself. Therefore, the concept of struggle for liberation and the concept of the nation cannot be separated from one another. It is in this historical context that I ask you to celebrate the Puerto Rican flag. I also ask you to take a moment honoring the Puerto Rican men and women who died defending it. Thank you.